My name is Eoin Meehan and I'm running for Shannon as a candidate on the Trinity College Dublin panel. My background is all in IT. I've worked in IT for coming up to 35 years now. I started in the tender days of the 80s as a computer programmer, and I've worked for many companies including Dell and Intel in various capacities as technical experts and managerial project managers. So my background is completely IT, and I started working with the internet in about 1988, so I've been working online effectively since then as well. The reason I'm running, it wasn't an overnight decision, it was something that came to pass over a couple of months. One of my concerns is for data protection and digital privacy of our citizens, and I've noticed that Ireland is becoming the battleground. It's now the forefront of the data protection wars, and we've seen recently the entire European Union and United States data transfer agreement was declared null because of an action that was taken in Ireland against our data protection commissioner. So we're in the front line, and I'm concerned that the amount of data that's been generated, the proliferation of technology, there's nobody in our oireachtas that actually understands that. So the problem is, if you don't watch these things, it's a slippery slope. We can move slowly down to where the US is and the UK is with the Snoopers Charter, and losing the privacy and losing data protection for our citizens. So I thought, this is my expertise, this is what I can do. The Seanad is supposed to be expert oversight of legislation. So I believe the Seanad is the ideal place for an expert like me to be able to bring my expertise to bear on incoming legislation. So that's my main priority. I've also got other priorities, because I believe a politician or anybody who's running for office must understand the situation in the country and be aware of the social issues of the country. So I'm also concerned about what's happened to our country over the last few years, particularly regarding the health service and how it's degraded. I've had particular experience of the health service over the last 2 years with various members of my family. So I see when it works brilliantly, and I can see how it's just about to fall apart, despite the best efforts of all the experts who are working there, and the medics, and the brilliant medics. You know, it's on a knife edge. So I would hope that I could use my position as a platform to help and to extend, to support effectively our National Health Service. I also believe easy, affordable childcare is something that we must bring in as the primary method of providing equality and gender equality in our country. And I think it's very important that we have easy, affordable childcare available to all working families in the country. And then finally, equality of access to schools. The religious orders have done very good work over the past century in fulfilling a need to provide education. But now that we have a Department of Education, now that we have funding, I believe you can't have a religious ethos limiting who gets what education. So they're the three social issues that I'm interested in. And then finally, as a graduate, I have a master's degree from Trinity. I've worked here for 2 years on research projects. I believe I'm well placed to be able to represent the interests of the college, of both the students and the researchers at a national level. And one other area I have a particular interest in is rural broadband. Seeing as I've moved to Virginia, I've now seen the difference between high-speed broadband in the city and, you know, what could be best described as carrier pigeon level broadband where I am at the moment. So I think 3 areas: my technical expertise, social concerns, and a national responsibility. I think the reasons the multinationals are here is not necessarily because of our possibly lax interpretation of data protection. The reason the multinationals are here is because we have a very well educated workforce. We have a young workforce, we are in the Eurozone, and we speak English. So as most of the major internet companies are American, it becomes almost a logical conclusion for them to be here. However, the issue is, if we pass laws that we think only affect us in Ireland, you have to remember the case that Max Schrems took against Facebook, which brought down the Safe Harbour Agreement, was taken against Facebook Ireland because the international companies have set themselves up here as their European headquarters. So if we pass a law here, it affects millions of European users. And I don't think we have the expertise necessary to bring in correct laws. If you notice, Senator Ryan Higgins tried to bring in a law, the Malicious Communications Act. Now, Senator Higgins was maliciously trolled on Twitter and Facebook, and it was terrible, and I completely condemn it. But her reaction was to bring in a law that was effectively badly written and could be detrimental to free speech and the interests of internet companies. And what I'm saying is I don't necessarily disagree with the law, but I'm saying it wasn't thought out. And it is, if we have politicians bringing in laws that they don't fully understand the technology and the implications, that's dangerous. And that was the one item that actually motivated me to start my campaign to run for the Senate. Well, there's two things about the Seanad. There's what it's supposed to do and what it is doing at the moment. It's supposed to be expert oversight of legislation. People in the Seanad are not supposed to be party affiliated. So for instance, if a senator is speaking on an agriculture issue, it should be Senator John Smith of the agricultural panel. It shouldn't be Senator John Smith of Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael or Labour or whoever. He or she should be bringing their expertise to bear to the Seanad, to tell the Seanad this is their expert opinion and the Seanad should vote on it. What it's turned into is, as we've seen, the creche for aspiring politicians, or a consolation prize if you've failed to get elected. So I believe its original intention is correct. What it can do at the moment is it can do one thing that's very important. All legislation that goes through the Seanad must be debated. It must be debated in the House, and it's debated under privilege. And that means senators can shine lights on legislation that's moving through the Dáil. It's not perfect. For instance, they can't really affect any money bills that are going through. But on all other legislation, they can hold up a light and they can say, we don't think that's right, that's wrong, there's something wrong with this. Whether they can actually do anything about it is moot, because technically all legislation goes through the Seanad after 90 days, whether they vote on it or not. But it does mean you can shine a light on it, and it's a privileged light, which means you can't be stopped from talking about it, you can't be sued for talking about it, and I think that's really, really important. So that's one big power that it can do at the moment. I would like to see it reformed to do what it was supposed to do when it was abolished by De Valera back in 1936. It was working too well, which is why it was abolished and brought back in the form it's in now, so that the government of the day effectively has control over it. Expert oversight of legislation, where it can look at the legislation on its merits and say this is a good thing or a bad thing. I think that's a very good check for democracy. There are what seems to be happening and what seems to be out there in the grey cyber world is, you've heard of this Internet of Things. We've heard of, because of the proliferation of broadband, of technology, because of the reduction in price of components, of processors, we're now seeing technology in everything. You know, there's technology in that camera, there's technology in that camera, the technology in here can be connected to the internet. So we're getting towards a more interconnected world. And as we get more interconnected, we can get attached to more things, we can see more things. And one of the concerns is critical infrastructure. We've already seen state-sponsored attacks in places like Iran and state-sponsored attacks from places like China on national institutions. So it's only a matter of time before somebody attacks a power grid, or somebody attacks a water grid, or somebody does something at that level. At the moment, I don't know, I don't think it's happened, but then again, we don't know it's happened. That's probably the single biggest threat. Underneath all that, there's all the other threats. There's the threats of cyber ransom, cyber crime, and all that, which is sort of happening at a, I suppose it's almost a normality, a normal level of crime. In the same way somebody might break into your house, somebody might break into your bank account. But I think the big threat is going to be towards infrastructure. That's going to be the big thing. Well, I wasn't involved in an awful lot, primarily because I'm a mature student. So I came here in 2004. I grew up across the road. I grew up in Mulster Street. I lived across from Bustler's Hotel on the Dáil. I went to school in Westland Row and Clarendon Street. So I've grown up around here, and it was always a dream to go to Trinity College, because when I was growing up, when I was 4 and 5, this was hallowed ground. You know, there were people in there who were really, really brainy, and there's no way I would ever get there. So getting here was a major achievement, I felt, in my life. But when I joined, I was living in Cavan. So I spent 5 hours a day commuting up and down for 2 years while I was doing my degree. The upside of it was I got to do my thesis on the train. Every morning I got an hour and a half of me time where I could just sit and type away and click away, so I think that was good. So I didn't have the time to be able to join the societies. I joined the Rifle Club, and I went a couple of times to that. I went a couple of times, there's a few film societies, but I unfortunately was not able to enjoy the student life as much as I would like to do it. Then again, at my age, I don't think I could actually cut it.